All right. So, again, my name is Quentin Russell. I am the content marketing specialist here at Doc365. And today, we really wanted to talk to you guys about selling while distancing. Right now, prospects are probably a little cold. We're currently in the middle of a huge economic crisis. A global pandemic is causing everyone to panic. And really, we're kind of all in triage mode, and we're all struggling to find answers for, what we should be doing next. What can we be doing to maintain, to really hit our quotas for the quarter? And you know that's a difficult question, and it's one that you have to approach from different perspectives. You have to look at it from that of from an actual sales professional, and you also have to look at it from the perspective of a sales leader. Now, my forte personally isn't really sales. So that's why we reached out to Ben Hapelli over at Benchmark Training. And, Benchmark Training is super amazing when it comes to helping people hit their quotas, like they said, and really coaching and developing sales professionals. So and today we really wanted to go over what you can be doing to really, reshape how you're approaching selling while we're all social distancing. So today, let's see. So today we're going to be going over, a quick introduction. We've kind of already done that. And then we're really going to be going over what can you do to sell remotely. Like I said, we're going to be looking at that from the sales professional's perspective and from the sales leader's perspective. And then we're going to go over some common questions that Ben and his team over at Benchmark have received over the last 7 or so weeks that are more specifically oriented towards coronavirus and what you can be doing right now. Additionally, during this time, we're going to be encouraging you guys to type out any extra questions you have in the chat. And at the end of all of this, after we go over the more guided portion of the Q&A, we're going to be asking your questions and really going in depth on those and seeing if there's any way we can help you personally. And then finally, if you're interested in sticking around, we're going to be doing a quick 5 to 10 minute demo of Doc365 CRM. It's not going to be super in depth. We're not going to be, we're not going to hold you here forever. So we ask that you take 5 to 10 minutes of your time to really take a look at that. Now, additionally, we are going to be doing a quick plug. So a lot of what we're talking about today is really going to be surface level. We can't get super in depth without knowing your situation, knowing what's going on. It depends on your industry, what your product is, what prospects you're trying to go after. And so right now we can't go into that super in depth. However, Ben and his team over at Benchmark are offering you the Benchmark Sales Objection Certification course. So what that is they teach you how to, so it's a 15-day course designed to teach you how to diagnose, overcome, and respond to different sorts of sales objections as they come up over the coming weeks and months. This isn't just something that you should be doing during the coronavirus outbreak. This is something that could potentially benefit you in the long term. And I'm actually going to turn it over to Ben so he can kind of give you a bit more of an in-depth spiel on that.
All right, thanks, Q. Yeah, so the quick version of that is that we do offer sales certifications, and Doc365 has partnered with Benchmark Training to offer these certifications for free to their network. So since you're in the Doc365 network, you're here now, be sure to check out their website so that you can see what certifications are currently available, log on for those, and get access to them completely for free, and even have the opportunity to not only be certified with that extra knowledge, but add that certification to your LinkedIn page, making you more marketable and also more respected by your prospects as they're searching who you are on LinkedIn as well.
Fantastic. All right, so now let's get on with the webinar. I think I'm going to really quick. I think I jumped the gun on on taking the screen back there. So just really, so we're gonna jump into things, and I'm going to turn things over to Ben fully and completely again. I apologize for the interruption.
It's tough to give up control, Quentin. I know it is, but thanks for doing it. And let's go ahead and jump into this. So some of the questions that I get right out of the gate usually start with technology, right? So my team was not working remote before, but now they are. And of course, they need the basic technology so that they can access data from maybe your cloud or your server, and of course, also work productively for hours at a time. So hopefully most of us here in this call are past that, and we do have some information available on our YouTube page for you to get in some of the details there on what technology is needed for a remote team, especially if you thought this might have been a short-lived project that your team was going through, and now as we're seeing it get extended, you may want to look that way as well. Now, there are other adaptations that we need to consider, but I'll tell you, when it comes to technology, one of the first things that sales professionals and sales leaders need to really focus on is making sure that we are 100% on point with the digital tools that we already have. And let's really hone in just for a couple seconds on our CRM. Okay, so now more than ever, keeping the CRM updated is paramount. And that is because there are a lot of distractions that we have when we're working remote that we didn't maybe have when we were all in the office at the same time. So if you just kind of think about it, maybe after you get off a really productive sales call, you used to be able to walk over to operations, have a conversation with them to make sure you can support this prospective new client and get everything you need right then and there, button up your notes, and you're golden. Well, now we don't get that opportunity. Now we have to send them a message on Teams or send them an email and then wait. And by the time that you hear back, you may have had 4 or 5 other sales calls, and all this information is getting jumbled up in your brain. So paramount again, keep your CRM updated now more than ever. Absolutely a critical component to working remote so that everyone who has access to that CRM can see the information, it's updated. And most importantly, since sales cycles are taking a lot longer now when your 100% of your sales cycle is virtual, it's very easy to forget that information that you had. So you're having more meetings with the same prospects, and it's really, really important that you have that information there ready for you without having to ask your prospects to repeat themselves. So super, super key point there that we all make sure that we're following here. The other component here is you're going to look at more meetings that are smaller bite-sized chunks more often. Okay, so let's break this into kind of 2 sections for our sales professionals on the line with us. And let's look at the first stage of the sales process. So like building rapport, discovery with your prospects. And then we'll go into the second stage, which is the discussions and all the way to the close. And while we're doing that, for those that are on the line now, if you would just real quick in the chat, send a message in to say if you're a sales pro or if you're a sales leader. Now, that way we know who our audience is and what we just need to spend more time on. Now, we do know that sales leaders can also be sales pros. There's both, but which one resonates with you the most? So we're talking to that persona for our short time that we have together. Now, looking at how do we make up for these, the lack of hands-on interactions with prospects. It is difficult to do that when you're not there in person, right? So you have to take some different skills, different traits here to build rapport, because it can be more difficult if you're relying just on your traditional methods of building rapport. So first and foremost, start with your LinkedIn profile, okay? So many buyers will check you out. They'll also check out your company on LinkedIn. And so you want to make sure you look professional, have a professional picture on your LinkedIn profile, make sure that you have some industry insight you're providing to your prospects, any kind of articles that you could repost or articles that you can write for yourself, anything that will show somebody very quickly the first time coming to your profile page that you are a professional, okay? So start there, because again, you will be checked out that way. Some other key points to building rapport, right? So very different to build rapport. I hear this all the time from sales professionals saying, hey, if I'm in front of a prospect, hands down, I can build rapport with them. I can make that connection. But I have a really hard time doing that on a Zoom call or just over the phone. And there are some different tactics that you need to employ here. So first off, we're all supposed to do this, but a lot of us don't. Make sure you are researching your prospect ahead of time, right? So you need to know who they are, where they've been, so that way your conversations are going to go that same direction that's going to make them feel most comfortable, okay? You're supposed to do that before virtual selling. You got to do it now. It's absolutely 100% important. Also, researching the company ahead of time. Now, a lot of us do that anyway, even when we're meeting with a prospect in face-to-face. But again, absolutely paramount. If you weren't doing this very thoroughly, then you've got to be thorough when you do this now. The other thing you want to do, if you're calling somebody outside of your local area, since you're no longer flying to their office or you're getting a chance to drive over to their office, meet them in person, you want to make sure that you're researching the local news for that individual. You want to know what's going on in their town, what they're talking about behind the scenes. That's going to first off show them that you care about them as a person. You're willing to invest time into their research. And it does also make great ice-breaking conversation as well for anything that's going on. So maybe they had, normally every year they have like a Daisy Festival in spring, but they're not going to have it this year. So the local news is talking about what they're doing instead. So that's a great conversation to have with them about what's going on in their local market and to show you really care about them as an individual, not just as a sale that you're trying to close. Okay, so building that rapport virtually does take some extra steps there. Now, if you are certified through Benchmark, you know about the ABCs of sales. If you don't, I'll humor you and make sure that you know what they are. So the ABCs of sales are always bring chocolate, right? So if you show up at a prospect's office without some sort of treat or chocolate or candy, usually chocolate is usually wins. You're missing out. Okay, it's a great way to show that you appreciate their time without having to say that and sound trite, and a great way to show that you prepared for that meeting. So always bring chocolate whenever you're meeting face to face. But in virtual selling, you can't do that anymore. So what do? When you're working with a prospect for the first time, or even if you're getting into some more multiple meetings, and this prospect is worth the energy of your team working with them, so there's a big opportunity there. Reach out to a local bakery, reach out to even like a Panera, if there's a Panera close by, and have desserts or treats delivered to your prospect's office prior to the meeting. So usually around that 15-minute mark prior to your meeting. So play this out in your head. The prospects get there 15 minutes before your meeting. There's a little note from you talking about how you're looking forward to learning more about their company. And now you instantly have this bond, instantly have this appreciation from your prospect. And what a great conversation starter right when you get on the call. So really, it's a golden method to build that rapport virtually and show them that you're thinking about them. So talk about all different ways that you can break the ice and build rapport. Now, of course, video technology is a must. So all of us are on Zoom now, and I'm sure we're having countless meetings of Zoom with our prospects and our team. In addition to that, screen sharing documents is a really good tool to use when you're going through your presentation. Okay, so there's multiple different softwares you can utilize for this. Some of you may have access to it, some of you don't. The key points here when sharing documents in a presentation is making sure that, just like in person, you are controlling those documents. Okay, so you don't want to just email them a PowerPoint deck and expect them to just go along with you as you're talking. You want to make sure you're controlling what they're seeing and making sure that the information that is on the PowerPoint deck is not 100% filled without the conversation and the dialogue that you're having with that prospect. So a lot of mistakes I see is sales professionals sending out the information at one time, or whether it's electronically or even mailing it to them ahead of time, and not controlling that information. So too much information, TMI definitely applies here. You want the dialogue to be filling in the blanks on any information that you share with your prospects. Okay, so really important there. The next thing we touched on a little bit earlier is you're going to be delivering your content in more bite-sized chunks. So let's elaborate on this. I'm sure that all of us have had this opportunity to meet with a prospect in person, right, in weeks and months and years past, and maybe even have a 2-hour meeting with that prospect with different stakeholders coming in and out of that meeting. You've had the tour of the office where you got a chance to shake hands, maybe with the CEO or some other stakeholders that are really important. Well, guess what? We don't get that anymore when we're selling virtually or selling remote. And that's one of the biggest complaints that I get from sales professionals who are used to face-to-face and have been doing that for years. So we have to make sure that we are preparing for these smaller, bite-sized chunk meetings, and that we're pulling in multiple stakeholders throughout those meetings. So there are some really important tactics here that we'll touch on in a little bit, so that you're using every opportunity you have to schedule that next meeting and bring additional stakeholders into that. So we'll dig in a little more here to the discovery section and look at some of those basics. So we know that discovery and understanding the decision-making process is critical face-to-face. Of course, it is absolutely critical still in virtual and remote selling. So we want to make sure that we're keeping that top of our priorities as we're getting to know our prospects. So you also want to make sure you understand what the mission critical priorities, right? So what are the business needs for what your solution brings to the table? And I know we've all heard that a couple times, but not everybody really digs into that, even in the face-to-face meetings. So we want to make sure that we are getting to the details on what the business needs are for our solution and how it's going to impact their business. Additionally, you want to find out who, so not just what is it going to impact, but who is it going to impact? Who is involved in that decision-making process as well as in the implementation of your solution? And you'll be surprised, even if you think that maybe you're selling to just one department, most of the time your solution is going to bleed over and be an asset, hopefully, for other departments as well. So getting your hands on each of those decision makers, each of those stakeholders throughout your dialogue with your main contact is going to help you tremendously as you're going through these virtual meetings, okay? So really understanding mission critical priorities, the business needs of your solution, and who is going to be affected, who's going to be involved with that. So as you're pulling in additional stakeholders into these small bite-sized meetings, since you can't shake hands with them like you could before, you can't just meet them in the hallway, then make a note of who it is you want to connect with later, right? The more people that you can pull into your virtual meetings, the more invested your prospect will be. And I've seen clients definitely over the last several weeks, but I've seen this over years as well when they're working remote, that if they pull in more people to their decision-making process in these virtual meetings, that their prospect is significantly more invested in your company versus your competitor's company who's not doing that same tactic. So it is super important, very valuable. You'll see the payoff pretty quickly by bringing in additional people to your meetings. So the question that always comes from that is, how do you get more people to join your meetings? And a lot of times I'll hear that main contacts really want to keep the relationship close to the vest. They don't want others to get involved in your calls. That's not always the case, but it does happen often. So what do you need to do to get in front of more people that are in your prospect's company? So the key thing here is you want to ask your main point of contact questions that you know they don't have the answer to. Okay, so I'll say it again. You're asking them questions that you know they don't have the answer to. And the reason that you're doing that is you're helping them realize that it's important for the other stakeholders to join this meeting, and that together you'll be able to help them navigate through this decision-making process much more efficiently and obviously much more effectively as well. And you want to get names of others. You want to find out what it is their needs are. So for example, you might say something as you're getting more insight of what a fictitious prospect, so, Jane maybe is her name, and you're talking to your prospect and you find out that Jane is going to be involved in the decision-making process and or is going to be affected by your implementation of your solution. So you might say something like, would it be helpful if Jane joined us on our next call just to give us a few minutes of her insight on what we're talking about? And you're helping your prospect make it her idea, and also getting an opportunity to get Jane involved in that decision-making process. Again, the more stakeholders involved, the more invested your prospect's going to be in your company versus your competition. And that's a really good place to be. Okay. Now let's switch over a little bit to presentations. When you're making your presentation, this is again still for the sales pros, and whether your presentation is a live demo of like your software, for example, or maybe it's a slide deck, it's really important on virtual meetings, a little bit different than face-to-face, that you are incorporating as many stopping points within that presentation as possible for meaning and relevant dialogue. Now, a very basic rule of thumb, without getting a chance to see, get a chance to really get to know your business specifically, but a very safe rule of thumb is every feature, all right? So maybe it's every PowerPoint slide, every one feature you show on your demo, you want to have a dialogue about how that prospect would utilize a feature like that, or what they think about a feature like that as compared to what they're doing now, as an example. Having that two-way dialogue as often as, again, every feature or every PowerPoint slide when you're meeting virtually is going to help increase the engagement that you have with your prospect. So here's the problem that we're facing in virtual selling. If I'm at a meeting with a prospect and I'm forcing them to go through my PowerPoint presentation, which is not recommended, but we all do it, you're going through that, you're able to watch their body language. You know if they pick up their phone and get distracted by what you're talking about. You know if somebody else comes into their office to ask them a question. When you're selling virtually, you don't know if that's happening. So you can adjust as needed. So to really draw in that prospect, make sure you're having that two-way dialogue as much as you can, as often as you can throughout your presentation. Now, the nice thing is not only are you keeping them engaged, but you're also learning about what's important to them, where they've had other challenges, where maybe they have kind of a negative perspective in their mind as you're going through your presentation. And that information is going to help you continue to move the sale closer to the close. It's a really, really important part here. And remember, you don't know what their body language is, even if you're on video. You don't know what distractions they're looking at while you're talking to them. So you've got to draw them in and engage here. Okay, so really important. We touched on this also, is keeping your slides as narrow as possible. So I have seen many PowerPoint slides. I'm sure no one on this call does this, but you probably know somebody who does. PowerPoint slides with just tons of information on them. You might be able to get away with that face-to-face. Again, your finger can kind of point to what they should be looking at if you're controlling their eye movement, but you don't have that opportunity on virtual sales. So one topic with very minimal narrative on your PowerPoint slides or whatever it is that you're showing them. The idea is that your conversation and that dialogue that we talked about is what's going to fill in the blank space, not the typed words on the PowerPoint. Okay, really, really important. So quick recap for sales pros here: keeping your CRM up to date, right? Be purposeful with your rapport building. Find ways to be a conversation in that office before, during, and after your call with them. And be prepared for more frequent, shorter conversations with more two-way dialogue, and work as hard as you can to get more of the stakeholders into those frequent, short, bite-sized meetings. And let's touch real quick on some additional tactics to assure that you're going to get that next meeting, right? We all know one of the golden rules of sales is never leave a meeting, right? So if we were in a classroom right now, I'll let you finish that sentence. Never leave a meeting without planning and scheduling the next meeting. Okay, so that's really important. So there's two steps that you can take here to make sure that's going to be really easy for you. And the first step is to start securing that next meeting very early. So what that might look like is throughout the dialogue, if they ask you a question you don't have the answer for, you'll let them know that you're going to do some research and you'll get them that answer in your next meeting, not in an email that you send to them afterwards, but in your next meeting. And talking about questions that they don't have the answer to. Well, we'll bring Jane in our next meeting. So you're setting the stage throughout your conversation that there is going to be a next meeting and that they want to be there because there's going to be valuable information in there. Now, if your sales cycle is a one call close, then instead of talking about the next meeting, what you want to set into their future in their mind is what the next step is, whatever that next step is. So for example, if you have typically a 3-meeting close, in each of those meetings, you're going to get them to the next one. If you have a 1-meeting close as your more common sales cycle, then you might say, so once you get started, we're going to do this, right? So once you get started, this will happen. So you're setting that vision for the prospect you're talking to very early in the conversation of what the next thing is going to happen is, so that they can get more and more bought into that. The second step here is make sure that you are assigning deliverables for you and your prospect. So there should always be homework assigned for you and your prospect at the end of each meeting. And that way your recap includes, when we get back together, Ms. Buyer, you're going to provide this and I'm going to provide that. Is there anything I missed? And we see a very significant increase in second meetings actually happening, as opposed to getting postponed or rescheduled or canceled, when both parties have homework assigned to them that they're going to deliver at that next meeting. So those 2 steps alone are going to make it that much easier for you to have more of these bite-sized multiple meetings towards that close. Okay. So from there, and if you have any questions, again, make a little note, go ahead and send that in the chat. We'll make sure we're addressing any of the questions you have for sales professionals. Let's turn just a little bit, since we're getting tight on time here, to the common challenges that leaders face when their team is remote. And again, IT's got to be set up. Those are just the basics. That's really where the fun begins. As a leader, you want to make sure that you are there to support the new challenges your team faces that maybe they've never faced before. And believe it or not, probably the 2 most common are call reluctance, right? So for those business development activities or business development reps that are making cold calls, there's a significant increase of call reluctance going on right now. And that's just common in remote working anyway. Unfortunately, there's also an increase in close reluctance, which means that the salesperson is afraid to go from a good conversation where they finally figured out how to build rapport with a prospect, and then going into making the close, because they're not there to make it tangible and to really hold the hand of the prospect all the way through the finish line. So that is something that is going to be a little bit higher for your team. Now, in addition to that, there are a lot of distractions that could get your team off of track, okay? So you have to be aware of those. So the first thing here is, as a sales leader, make sure that your team knows the importance of their role to the company, of the operations team that is counting on them to be successful and to hit their numbers, and that what they're working towards is a lot bigger than just a quota, a number, or a commission check, that they're part of something that's much larger than them, and they play a key role in the success of that group. If you're not having those conversations with your sales team already, now you got to. Okay, so it's a really, really important conversation to have, and it's an ongoing conversation. It's not just a one-time thing. And additionally, you want them to understand how important their role is to the customer. Whatever you're selling is a solution to something. And whether the specific prospect they're talking to right now or the one they're going to talk to later today, one of those is likely in need of the solution that you bring to the table. And without your solution, their company is not going to be running at its best point possible. Your sales team needs to understand that helping customers navigate through this purchase process and selecting the right option, again, is really important. That's much bigger than they are. So they are helping that company keep jobs and helping that company run more effectively and efficiently. So what they're doing on the front lines has a purpose. It's bigger than them. And your job is to keep that front and center in every way you can for your remote team. Now, that doesn't mean that they're not going to be distracted by Netflix or maybe even cleaning out their pantry for the 4th time. There are lots of distractions out there when you're working remote. So tracking activities is okay. And of course, tracking outcomes is okay. I get a lot of sales managers that say, whether it's pandemic specific or if it's just remote team specific, how do I keep my team accountable when I'm not right there and watching their every move? Okay. So the key thing here is you do want to maintain realistic and aggressive activity goals and outcomes. So it's that balance of realistic and aggressive at the same time. So you have to remember, as a manager, if you're used to walking around the bullpen or the cubicles and watching everyone's activity and correcting their missteps on the spot, that is gone completely as a sales leader when your team is remote. So goal setting is paramount, but don't confuse that with goal dictating. All right. So it's not just shoving a number into the front of their face and saying, hey, you have to do that. Now, I know that we all get our number from corporate, right? There's a bigger picture to this, but there's still room for your sales team to own their activity goals that are going to get them to that final number. Also, for them to own their weekly outcomes that are going to get them to that final number. And you want them to create that in a dialogue with you so they can really own that. So when you're holding them accountable, you're not just holding them accountable to a random number, but you're holding them accountable to a number that they've created for hopefully for a purpose that's important to them. So going back to being part of a bigger picture, understanding what each individual sales team member's why is, what is it that makes them get out of bed and want to work harder? That's really important to have for your sales team, whether you're in person or virtual. But if you don't have that when you're virtual, you're not going to be able to keep your sales team accountable and keep them focused. So really understanding their why, understanding their purpose is going to help create these daily and weekly activity and outcome goals that will get them to those big picture goals that are going to help you hit your numbers, right? So you've got to still hold them accountable, but do it in a way that pulls their inner drive more so than just what you can do minute by minute walking around the floor and watching their moves. So once they have those goals set, your job is to motivate them and hold them accountable to those. And the ways that you can do that, the tools that you have access to really start from an increase in formal and an increase in informal communication. So with formal communication, at a minimum, if you're not doing this now, highly recommend it, at a minimum, a Monday morning kickoff and a Friday afternoon wrap up. That would be an absolute minimum right now with your virtual team. What I see with clients getting the best results is when they have a daily AM kickoff and afternoon wrap up. And sounds a little bit extreme, but let's dig into this a little bit. Your kickoff and your wrap up should be under 30 minutes, typically about 15. So it's an opportunity for the team to all pull together and talk about the hot topics that they have, and then also wrap up all their accomplishments for the day. So we're seeing great success in that as well. Also, if you have one-on-one meetings with your sales team now already, so kudos to you. Typically, I'll see those are in person or lasting about an hour. In a virtual team, much more traction from 2 half-hour one-on-ones each week versus having just one 1 hour one each week. So keeping, again, small chunks of information and keeping everyone connected that way is going to give you much better results than trying to pull everything into one day or just 1 hour face-to-face. So as a sales leader, make sure you're staying in communication with your team and having those bite-sized conversations. Then, of course, there's informal communication. So there's like MS Teams and Slack, an intranet. If you don't have an intranet in your company, there's lots of great options. Obviously, Doc 365 is a great option. Anything you can do to pull the team together is going to be super, super critical there as well. And having happy hours. So believe it or not, coffee video calls, happy hour video calls with your team, and even maybe getting food pre-delivered to your team during those calls, a great way to stir up that informal communication and keep your team gelling together. So super, super important. So I know we're going a little bit over time here. Quentin, do we have time for a question or two?
Absolutely. All right. So I guess one of the first questions, probably one of the more important ones, is are there any benefits right now to remote selling? I know that's something that's on a lot of people's minds, whether or not this is something they might want to consider after this crisis ends, whether that's something they want to shift fully to or adopt some of the methods and practices they're doing now, at least partially.
Quentin, yeah, absolutely. So one of the biggest things that you'll see, I mean, there's the obvious ones, right? So it's like you don't need as much office space, which can really add to your bottom line. But some of the things that leaders don't think about is that you also have access to great talent that you may have not had access to before. And this is because obviously you can hire people in different cities, sometimes different countries if it's applicable, and still manage them remotely, still get great results from them remotely, but maybe they didn't live in your city and they're not interested in moving to your city. So really, really big opportunity there for talent. In fact, I work with a lot of talent, and I get a chance to meet talent that's good at what they do, and they would never consider working for a position that was not remote. So this remote selling can really help increase your talent pool. Super valuable. And also, if you're following those basics that we touched on as a leader, you're going to filter out the poor performers faster. And that is a must for developing any sales team. See, now the poor performers can't ride the coattails of the good performers. They can't sneak over to the cubicle and ask somebody to help them do something. So it's much easier to see those A players because their activities are going to be greater, their closing ratio is going to be greater, and the poor performers are going to fall below that much faster. And as we all know, when developing a great sales team, that's always a secret part of the recipe, is bring the great talent on. And if it's not so great, move them off quicker than letting them try to hang on too long.
Fantastic. And then I guess since we're running up on time, we're really going to just focus on this question. People are going to be running into sales objections right now. Some pretty common ones are, we don't know what's going to be happening in the next month. So how can we justify making this purchase? How can we justify using your service? What would be your response to that? How would you tell people to really overcome that?
Yeah, objections, there's lots of formulas to objections. I'll tell you, we do cover a very thorough and very field-tested formula in our objection certification, which I believe is available on the DOC website. So highly recommend going to that. It is free, and it's a great way to master the art of building a bridge between you and your prospect, as opposed to what most sales professionals do, unfortunately, is build a wall between you and your prospect when there's that objection there. So highly recommend checking that out. And again, it's free and a great way to get that certification.
Fantastic. Well, I think that's about all we've got time for. We want to make sure that we're respecting everyone's time. However, I do invite you to go check out Benchmark Training. They do a fantastic job. We've worked with them and partnered with them on several different webinars, and we're partnering with them to bring everyone the Benchmark Sales Objections Certification course. And again, we've kind of talked about that a couple of times throughout the webinar, but we can't emphasize enough how effective that is at helping you really overcome a lot of these sales objections, like Ben was saying. And we really invite you to go take a look at that and sign up. We've really taken a lot of the cost out of that for you guys. So you don't. So there's no cost for you to sign up for the certification course, and it's a great thing to add to your resume. It's also a great thing to add to your LinkedIn that people, so that sales prospects can know that they can trust you and that you have these certifications and that you're going out of your way to build up your pedigree and really build up your skills. Ben, if you have anything you wanted to say?
No, thank you though for that. I appreciate everybody jumping on, and hopefully this is going to help you do just a little bit better this quarter as you're selling remotely. And again, follow us on LinkedIn and on YouTube at Benchmark Training. And that way we can stay connected, and I'll be able to be around to answer your questions. Looking forward to it.
Fantastic. And just I think that, and all right. So real quick, with that said, we do want to take some time to talk to you guys about Docs CRM. I know Ben earlier talked about how, you really want to be updating your CRM. Well, you want to make sure that you have a quality CRM. So in the past, our CRMs in the past, we've seen CRM solutions deliver a lot. So in terms of the overall benefits, you have the potential to see up to a 9% increase in your overall revenue by using a CRM. And in fact, having a quality CRM and keeping that updated can do a great job towards also helping you retain your current customers, because that's a big thing that we're going through right now. Is because you're potentially not going to be able to get as many new prospects coming in, not being able to convert as many of those. You really got to focus on keeping your current clientele, keeping them around, retaining them, so that even if you can't meet your quotas as effectively as you'd want to, you're at least not losing anything. So with that said, I'm going to turn things over to another Ben, Ben Senjem. He is he's the guy you want to talk to at Doc if you're interested in any of our different solutions. So I'm going to really quick turn that over to him.
Thank you, Quentin. I appreciate the introduction there. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here just to give you a very high-level overview of Doc's CRM. Kind of, Quentin, as you had touched on, CRM is important now more than ever to collaborate with your team while working remotely. If you talk to almost any salesperson, one of the biggest things, heartaches that they have, with a CRM is they're cumbersome, they're difficult to use, there's no automation. We believe we've actually solved that here with our CRM right here. So this is our dashboard of our CRM. It is actually built on your Office 365 tenant, so it's customizable. You're seeing your dashboard right here, so you can track deals, amount of money. You can see your tasks right here as you log in, so your employees can essentially, because it is working off Microsoft Office 365, it has single sign-on, so they can essentially click the link, they'll jump right into their CRM. It's secure. And they'll see their tasks right here to start their day. They'll see on the right-hand side, the deal stages. So they'll get a nice overview of where everything is. They'll come down here into contacts. So after they get off the phone with somebody, they can jump right in here and filter through all the different contacts. They can update after they spoke to this individual. It's Paula, it looks like. So we can add a note if we had a meeting with her, if we'd like to do that. You could add a phone call. It's got email capabilities. So if the company domain is in this CRM and you receive an email from Outlook, it'll automatically log that email. So that's great for automation. So that way you're not having to plug in all that information. Your sales team now is busier more than ever. So having some of that time savings and less room for errors, they're not skipping. Logging some of that information is great in a time like right now. And you can also have email capabilities. You can email right from the solution right here. And then of course, task management to make sure that, you're keeping up with your prospects and you're really pushing them through the deal stages here. Also has document management capabilities. Of course, that's always important. You want to make sure that you're storing all those documents in one area. And then you can see all the categories, metadata for that contact. We can also easily jump to the associated company and even the deals for them. So if you come over here to the company, you'll see all the contacts within that company and all the notes for them. So you're collaborating with your team to work together on a certain deal, and then you can jump over the deal stages as well. And then we also have the deals right here. If you really wanted to see where the the deals are, we have a deal stage which is easily changed right here. So it gives you a nice a visual representation of where exactly the deal is. So you can jump right in here and see where you're really going with that, and where the deal is. And from our tasks tab here, you can jump in. You can really manage the tasks right from here. You can even assign them to certain users if you're admin. So it's very easy to use. Like Ben and Quentin were kind of talking about, CRM is a very important tool to have right now while everybody's working remotely. And if you would like to learn how the CRM can be customized to fit your needs, or discuss further, you can email me, ben@mydoc365.com, or check out our website, mydoc365.com. So to wrap it up, I'll turn it back over to Quentin, and thank you very much for having me.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you so much. And then let me take back over real quick. So with that said, if you have any more questions about DocCRM or any of our other solutions, feel free to reach out to Ben Senja, Ben at mydoc365.com. His phone number is on the screen if you wanted to reach out and talk to him directly. In addition to that, we do plan on offering further webinars like this in the future. And in addition to that, we are currently coming out with new blogs weekly that really go more in depth on some of these issues and can help you out with anything from remote working to maintaining sales and how to use Office 365, SharePoint, and Microsoft Teams. Thank you very much, and I hope you all have a great day, and I hope that you stay safe.